Welcome to our soap making lab. This is what our final product will look like after a few weeks of drying, and hopefully everybody can have a bar of soap. So our equipment is the same as what we used in the biodiesel reaction. We have our oil, our filtered oil here, which we need to lift up. We'll tare it and then we'll place this back on. That way we can calculate how much is going through our system here. Our pump, our dosing controller, stop start to turn that on. That will send the oil through this line through the top of our reactor. Into the reactor we can input our chemicals through the top here and make sure that this bottom is in all the way, otherwise you'll lose fluid out of this bottom portion here. So to turn on our reactor, we have this on switch. We'll turn it on. If that light is on, the stirrer is off. So once we put fluid into our reactor, we'll want to turn our stirrer on and give it a second, and then it will get up to speed. Be careful with the reactor. During the reaction, the reactor vessel gets pretty hot, so don't stick your hands behind here, otherwise you could get burned. The last piece of important equipment is our cooling and heating system here. So the way this works is we turn this on. And for the reaction, we set it to 50. If it's not set to 50, you click set, and then you can type in 50, and then enter. And it will start to heat up. So we do this reaction at a higher temperature. It helps our soap cure a little faster. And the way our cooling system works is we have a mixture of water and propylene glycol in these tubes. They go into the reactor, and inside of the reactor is a heating oil that goes around the reactor as a jacket. And this heating from our heating system, or if it were cooling, interacts with the oil inside, and that oil is what ultimately cools or heats up the reactor. So besides the used cooking oil, we have some other materials. We have our silicone molds for our soap at the end, which is where we'll place the hot liquid soap for it to dry. We have sodium hydroxide, which is used to create our lye. We also have sodium chloride, which we can use as an additive. The same goes for the citric acid. And then we have essential oil to help our soap smell better. So the first step of the lab is to turn on our heating or cooling system. So we simply click the on button, set it to 50 if it's not already set to 50. Next we'll turn on the reactor simply by flipping the switch. Make sure our stirring is off until we put our stuff into the reactor. Next we're going to measure out the volume of water that we need. We're going to use distilled water, and for this video I'm going to do 75 milliliters, but do whatever it says in your lab procedure. So we'll go ahead and dump our water into the reactor. The next thing we're going to measure out is our sodium hydroxide. So we're going to use this scale for that. We're going to go ahead and tare it to 0, and then I'm going to measure out the appropriate amount. Now that the sodium hydroxide is weighed out, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the stirring, and then I'm going to open our inlet here, and I'm going to dump in our sodium hydroxide. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to let the sodium hydroxide dissolve in the water, and that should take about 10 to 15 minutes. So the sodium hydroxide dissolved a lot faster than 10 minutes, but we still had to wait about 10 minutes for our heating system to get up to temperature. Our next step is going to be to start putting our oil into the reactor. So I've calculated how much oil I'm going to put in to be 250 milliliters worth. So I'm going to go ahead and start our dosing controller. Now that that's started, you can see the stream of oil coming into the reactor, and it's going to start mixing with our water and sodium hydroxide, and it's going to start to create soap. So we're almost down to the right amount of oil being put in. You can see our reaction, the color has changed, looking a lot more like soap. And then once it hits our amount of oil, we're going to go ahead and stop our dosing controller. Next, we're going to let the reaction go for a little while. We're going to add in some essential oil to help with the smell, and then we'll take some soap out and then experiment with some different additives. To add the essential oil, we just use our dropper from the container. I'm just going to go ahead and put in a few of these. And then we'll let that mix. So we're going to put some of these silicone molds in our fume hood, prepare those for when we take the soap out of the reactor. You can mark them to keep track of the different additives that you do, so you know which soap had which additive. And the first soap we're going to take out is just the raw materials that we've put in so far. The way we get this out is we put a beaker under the exit valve here, and we open this slightly until it starts to come out. You'll notice that a little water will drip out. We want to stop that, close the valve, wait for it to drip out a little, and we'll discard this, clean it out, and then get the next little bit out. Okay, so I'm going to open this. I'm going to let some of the soap drip out. I want about 125 milliliters will fill up the mold. So watch for the level, and then stop it when it has come out. Now that it's dripped out, I'm going to take this to the fume hood, and I'm going to pour it into one of my molds here. Make sure not to overfill the mold. As I said, it should be about 125 milliliters to fill it up. So now I'm going to do some additives such as sodium chloride, citric acid, and then I'll follow the procedure, letting it mix, and then taking out the soap, filling up the molds until we have all of our molds full. So now all my molds are full. The evaporation process will take a few weeks until you get to the final product of some hard soap. And as the procedure mentioned, you'll need to be checking the pH. I'm not going to go through this in the video. It's in the procedure, so just follow that for how to do that.